The Trade is brought to you by Vantage Markets, delivering one of Australia's most trusted and award-winning trading experiences. Explore smart trading at vantagemarkets.com.au.
Hello and welcome to The Trade on this Monday. I'm Andrew Gagan. Well, before we get into the charts, just take a look at what traders are watching out there today. Israel and Iran maintaining their attacks, killing and wounding civilians and raising concern of a broader regional conflict. Meanwhile, the group of 7 leaders will gather in Canada with the conflict between Israel and Iran expected to be high on the agenda. And Reuters reporting that renewed US-China trade truce left a key area of export restrictions tied to national security untouched, an unresolved conflict that threatens a more comprehensive deal. Meanwhile, new bank lending in China rose less than expected in May after hitting a 9-month low in April as companies and consumers remain cautious about taking on more debt despite interest rate cuts and a trade truce. Let's now get across the technicals, and joining us, Louise Bedford from Trading Game. Louise, always good to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us again. So, of course, so much going on in markets at the moment. What are you watching?
Yeah, there really is a lot going on in the markets. The interesting thing is, though, that the volatility has been dropping across the major market indices, which makes for a little bit of a sigh of relief from traders. So let's have a look at the hot or not. So the facts at a glance, in the Australian market, we have 7 hot sectors, 5 cold and 5 in limbo. So there's definitely been a swing to the hotter side of life. But have a look at that upper resistance line. We have had so many weeks of this market going up and up and up. I wouldn't be surprised if we had a little bit of a downtrend, even if it's temporary, before the original trend continues. So the volatility for the All Ords is currently at 2.19%, and you can find all of this and more in my free Hot or Not special report that I produce for AusBiz watchers, which is at tradinggame.com.au/hot or not.
Well, Louise, let's drill down a little further then, beginning with the top 20 in the ASX. What are you seeing?
With the top 20, this is a little bit of a surprise because often we flee to safety in terms of market cap, but these top 20 are cold. But if you contrast that to the top 100, which should be the next chart, the top 100 are hot, and also the next chart will show the top 300 are also hot. So what we are seeing is that the money is moving in to the sectors that are actually a smaller index, especially particularly under the top 300. So don't let the size of the company you're thinking of trading differ from your original expertise and your knowledge about, yes, this is likely to go up. Don't think that just because it's not in the top 20, I shouldn't trade it, because right now there are opportunities outside those very top levels of market capitalisation.
Well, let's take a look at some sectors then. Now, as we speak, the energy sector doing very well locally because of this unfolding conflict in the Middle East. What are you seeing there?
I love that you've mentioned this. It is very interesting to see this chart because what we can see in the lower panel of the chart is the relative strength comparison, where it's looking at the all odds comparison with the energy sector. And we can see that energy has been underperforming for many, many months. Now, what we have currently is a beautiful uptick above its own little 30-week moving average there, but it is in limbo because even though, yes, the RSC has outperformed its moving average, it hasn't outperformed for a full 5 weeks. Once it gets to, assuming it does get to 5 weeks, then it's considered a hot sector.
Let's move on to tech. Louise, what are you seeing?
Yeah, some good news continuing in tech. It's a lovely hot sector. pretty much led by the Nasdaq. But look again at that top line of resistance. It's quite an interesting, quite firm line with 3 touches. And I do think it wouldn't be a surprise if we had a little bit of a pause here, but that doesn't mean you have to sell out of your positions. It's just something to be aware of. And then you can go, okay, it's fine. This is all part of how the market works. Don't knee jerk out of any reaction just because we get a little bit of a rebound from that resistance line.
And Louise, let's get across the healthcare sector, what you're seeing there.
Yeah, this is unfortunate, isn't it? We've got the price action for this index underneath its own moving average, and the RSC is definitely underperforming the All Ords. So this is cold, and this is an area where you could lighten your positions, you could tighten your stops, or you could avoid it altogether in terms of new positions.
Now let's refocus then what we're seeing on Wall Street, Louise, beginning with the Nasdaq.
We've got some good news with the Nasdaq. Luckily, volatility has come down, which is terrific. It was over 6%, heading towards 7 at one stage. That gap is very unusual in that Nasdaq chart. But right now, the volatility is 4.88%, very tradable with the Nasdaq shares. So we can see that this is in limbo at the moment. And why is it in limbo? It hasn't quite had 5 weeks of outperforming the All Ords, but it is a beautiful looking chart from the long side, and it is something that I really do feel people could get involved with in terms of purchasing an ETF so that you get broad exposure to this index through the one instrument of an ETF, but you do have that diversification that is required for every good trader.
And Louise, what trends are you seeing on the S&P 500 at the moment?
The S&P 500 isn't quite performing as well as the Nasdaq, but in terms of the way that it's performing, it has become in limbo in comparison to the All Ords. So it is looking great. It's got a beautiful gap up, which is holding, which is a real key bullish term there. We want those gaps to hold and to be strong. The volatility has come down a little as well to 4.04%, which is very tradable, but we are just under that incredibly strong line of resistance there. I do think with these types of lines of resistance, though, if you had something going up and up like a rocket, then that would be also something that would strike fear into the heart of the average trader, because you do want it to have some pauses on the way up, and that way you have multiple entry opportunities.
Louise, great to get across what you are seeing on the charts. Thanks for joining us from tradinggame.com.au.
Such a pleasure.
And that is the trade.
The Trade was brought to you by Vantage Markets, delivering one of Australia's most trusted and award-winning trading experiences. Explore smart trading at vantagemarkets.com.au.